Go. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay with the Gaian Congress, and I'm here today with Nora Herold, who this is her third Congress, and we're so excited to have her back. And the reason I'll say the specific reason we really excited to have her back this year because this year we had sort of a directive to not just do workshops, but to have activations where we can really feel the change or the energy of what we're trying to learn and shift. And we feel Nora does such a great job, not just channeling the fairies, but she really brings through their energy. And so we're so excited to have her with us. And so I love to start, Nora, just by sharing maybe how did you first connect with the fairies?
Yeah. Hi, Lindsay and everyone, and thank you for having me back. I just love collaborating with you all in this way. So, fairies for me, like that was something I always just believed, right? Like, I didn't need any empirical proof or evidence. To me, it was just like, oh yeah, fairies are real, right? But I think my perspective on them was still like tiny winged beings, right? I didn't really understand them in the way that my understanding has evolved into. So I had my first contact with my spirit guide at the end of 1996. And at that point, that opened me up to my abilities as channel and accessing all of my records. And that's when I met the Pleiadians very quickly afterward. And I had this friend, Amy, who I worked with. Doing channeling work with play with, it was very playful for us back then. It's still very playful for me, right? And Amy grew up on a farm and then she went to college in New York. She was this wonderful combination of like urban, rural fairy. Like I just knew her as a fairy as soon as I met her and that actually was part of shifting my understanding of the fairies, right? Like, oh, I see, here's a fairy in human form who I would watch her like disassociate, leave her body at times, and she's very clairvoyant and super witchy and magical. And she introduced me to Jessica Macbeth's work, right? And then when the fairies oracle came out, I got the fairies oracle, and that then immediately put me in touch with my energetic connections with the fairies in a much more clear and defined way, that tool. And I began to realize like what I had defined as fairy was a very limited definition of the energy that in fact many of the beings I was already channeling that I was referring to as spirit guides or other kinds of forms of energy, some of them were fairy in origin, fifth and sixth dimensional fairy beings. And then that evolved for me into me finally at some point, I don't really know exactly when, embracing the fact that at least a piece of me is fairy. And more I've claimed that as my identity. And I tend to bring my fairy identity and my Pleiadian identity forward now pretty equally. And in my work, I channel the Pleiadians and Ursula, the fairy, Kalyandra, the fairy, Alderon, the fairy realms, right? And also, I feel my own fairiness. I have accessed my records of my lifetimes when I incarnated here on Earth as fairy back when the fairies were physically incarnate on planet Earth. I have remembered lifetimes on other worlds that were populated by physically incarnate fairy as the dominant species. So, yeah, that's my whole, and I have some fairy lineage in my genetics go on my Irish side, going all the way back as my Czechoslovakian side tends to be my more Pleiadian genetics. So there, I guess that's the kind of longer answer for you
Yeah.
here. It's yeah, and it's constantly evolving for me, Lindsay. It's fascinating. Like I remember, it was probably year 2000. I was working at a metaphysical bookstore in Chicago doing readings, doing tarot readings there. And I walked by some guy who was standing there and he just blurted out, "You're not a psychic, you're a fairy." And I remember back then thinking like, "Oh, no, Amy is the fairy, right? Like I'm more Pleiadian." So it's really taken me a long time to claim it, own it. And part of that is due to healing pieces of trauma that I carry and have carried with me from some of those experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I find it interesting. I've found in my studies and playing, working with the fairies, that they're evolving too. I don't know, we're all evolving. It's
Yes.
like, yeah,
Yes.
so
I
they're not
love,
the same.
yeah, I love that you said that, right?
Yeah,
Because it's so true
yeah,
that this entire universe, our universe
yes,
is evolving.
yes, yes, the planet and everything on it. And
Yeah.
yes, we're all
Yeah.
going through this together. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it's great. Right. And so then my next question, because the theme that came through for today, um, because I work co-creatively, putting together the Congress, and so I listen for what is our kind of overall intention. And this year, the fairies, the fae, our guides, our allies is the term that I've found I like to use more, because they're not necessarily guiding us, but they're with us on this path. Anyway, what they wanted to help us with is to help us access our innate wisdom. So we're not always looking outside of ourselves
Mhm.
for whatever guidance, um, information, help. So how did the fairies help you stay connected with that?
Yeah, so first, I'm a huge fan of that path, right? Which is why I do so much teaching because I feel like that's really what we're here to do. All of us, every earthling, is embody our fifth dimensional identities or our higher selves. So, my understanding of the higher self initially, or the 5D consciousness, was that it was this etheric kind of form. And then as I worked with the fairies more, and they kept referencing the fact that they were 5D, living in a fifth dimensional vibration in space, at some point I was like, oh, holy shit, everyone's higher self is a fairy. Right?
Hmm.
So then, as I consciously have worked on integrating the energy of my fifth dimensional consciousness, my fairy self, my higher self, like all those terms are interchangeable, into the density of my physical body. This is what has helped me from the fairy realm to stay connected, feel just constantly, always as if I am both Nora, third dimensional Nora, born to the parents I had, and also fifth dimensional me, which encompasses so many different experiences and levels of understanding, some of which I can't yet even grasp, and my essence as fairy. So, there's that piece. And then there's, I had this cat, the Smurf, who I knew to be fairy as soon as I met her in 2008. She was so clearly fairy here in cat form. And when she died in the fall of 2019, she let me know she'd be returning through me in my work in her full fairy form as Ursula, that was her given name, was Ursula. We referred to her as the Smurf because Ursula always felt too formal for this cat who was extraordinarily physically beautiful, right? Like, and yet she was the Smurf right, when she was here. So she came through almost immediately after her passing, just a few days after in a group session. And she has been instrumental in keeping me plugged into the fairy realms, my own fairiness. Anytime I interact with an animal now, I look to see who are they bringing through, right? Who is sharing their body with them? Is this a fairy? Is it an elf? Is it a gnome? Right? Pixie, a brownie? Is this some other kind of extra dimensional energy? So animals are hugely important to me. I have three dogs now, and they're all right, so special. I have my elf unicorn hybrid Zoe hanging out right behind me right now. She demanded to be in my room
Nice.
and have this conversation with you, Lindsay. So there's that. And then of course, just being outside. Every time I'm
Yeah,
outside,
yeah,
it's there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I found that's a meditation focus I try to work with a lot, is being mindful of them, both 3D here and 5D, and try to just be mindful of
Yes.
both at the same time.
Yes, the
That's,
yes
yeah.
and
Yes,
philosophy.
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for checking in with us this morning. And for everyone, Gaian Congress is coming up January 16th through 18th. Um, really highly recommend. We do this once a year, and it's just a sort of concentrated, focused, energetic, powerful transformation. So would love to see you there. Thanks so much. All right.